What is happening, everybody? Welcome to Off the Rails, a recovery podcast dedicated to ending the stigma of addiction through open discussion on all things recovery related. My name is Mark. With me always are Dave and Jared. Today we have a very special guest. We have Jessica Compton, founder of Tree of Stars on Tour. She's joining us today, and we're very thankful to have her here. Thank you very much, Jessica, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Usually what we do is have our guests on and just, it's kind of the floor is open to you to kind of share your story and where you want to start. And how much detail you want to get into is completely up to you. And, we'll jump in with a couple questions here and there. But other than that, the floor is all yours. Kind of get into.
Yeah, so I like to, again, thank you so much for having me. I like to go back and say that my story started as far as I can remember. So I remember up until age 4 or 5. I'll start with all the bad stuff first. I guess all the the bad stuff, life experiences, the layers of the onion, the trauma. So I was taken away from my parents when I was 4. There was some partying going on. Some just not so good situation where there was different types of abuse going on. So the system had come in, taken my sibling and I, placed us in a couple different foster homes. And after a year, my father had got custody of both my sister and I, and we moved up north. So we were born and raised down in Stony Creek, Hamilton area. And we were brought up to North Bay. And when we were brought up north to North Bay, there was a different lifestyle, I guess, or culture, religion. We were brought to the reserve, and my dad had married an Indigenous lady. And so I was living the culture and learning about what smudging was, learning what the creator was, and then also hopping onto a bus, going to a Catholic school, learning about the Bible. And then there was some situations in my household where, so I guess heads up, trigger warning for anybody that's listening. So there was a night of partying. Everybody, had went to sleep. I was out in the middle of the country, and in my home, there was a man who came in to our house in my bedroom, had taken me for a couple hours, brought me to his car. I was in the middle of the night. It was raining. It was dark. I actually remember a part where my body like froze and kind of blacked out. So after the sexual assault, he brought me back in the house, put me back in my bed, and left. And my sister at the time, she went downstairs, got my dad. They, brought me to the hospital. I was checked out. So fast forward, I started having behaviors. I was wetting to bed. I started acting out. I had a therapist. I was diagnosed in grade 2 as well with ADHD. And I think with all these behaviors of not knowing where my mom was, being in different cultures, religions, just all this stuff going on. There was a little bit of trauma as well with my stepmother. So I guess you could say that I had a lot going on, but I really didn't understand it. And, I'm 45 years old. So back then, there was still some questions of, why I had behaviors such as bullying. And so fast forward, I guess I'm just, in and out of foster homes. I was taken out of my home again. So, throughout the years, I always had something going on. I was setting a fire. I was stealing. I was lying. I was spitting on kids. I was just a wreck, and they just couldn't understand where it was coming from, what was going on. I can go through the list of like mental abuse, sexual abuse. I was always, anywhere I went, I was also like in a position where I was molested, and by foster parent, by a neighbor, by, my dad's friend. Like there was always something going on. So by age 12, I was smoking cigarettes. I was like, full inhaling, and I got into the marijuana, started drinking, started getting into pills, started getting into mixing with the pills and the alcohol. And then my dad just kicked me out. He's like, you know what, you're not following the rules, get out. So I was 15 years old. I was on the streets, hopping from couch to couch. There was days where I didn't have anywhere to sleep, so I'd just stay up and just roam the streets. I got arrested. My first arrest, I was 15. They sentenced me, so I did 3 months in young offenders, and when I got out, I was on probation. Breached the probation. I went back. So I got arrested 4 times, and I got sent away every single time. The last time I was 18, so it was adult. So I did some adult time, and then I was like, you know what? I need to grow up. I need to get my shit together. I need to. No one's gonna sit here and take care of me, but I mean, let me reflect for a second on the correctional part of rehabilitation. If it wasn't for, corrections sending me to um, rehabilitate, to learn about why or what trauma was, learning about my ADHD and what I could do, learning about what being clean is, or, you know, um, giving myself life again and figuring out where to go. So I thank the correctional system for sending me every time. And then I went back to went to high school, finished at age 21, went to college to be a correctional officer. So I got my diploma there. And it was super cool. I knew the system. So some of the case management work that I did in college, it was super easy. And then, yeah, it kind of brings me to today. But before I close up, my success and what I've been doing for the last, since I was 19, 21, 21. If there's any questions about, me being arrested, what, corrections was like. I mean, again, I had mentioned that I was molested many times. I was raped once. There was just, I call it a nasty onion, and there was so many layers with it. And if you leave an onion sitting, like it stinks, right? So I think I was kind of like this nasty onion just sitting there. And I wasn't educated enough, or people weren't educated around me to figure out what's next or what's going on, right? So yeah, I'm open for any questions of the or comments for the story, and then I'll move forward.
Jessica, so we've had guests on, and they've been to prison, and they're like as addicts and stuff, but you hear of stories where they're like sent to prison and it's not like a rehabilitation at all, and then you just get sent back out on the street. So I found it kind of interesting that you were sentenced, or that they had a rehabilitation program that you were a part of. I was just, if you could add on that part.
Yeah. So I think because so I had a lady that I knew when I was 7. She was my therapist years and years, but I think she had some advocacy, a part of, as a young offender, to keep me safe and to say, yes, sentence her. She's got nowhere to go. But again, I'm 45. So looking back, the funding was there, but also, the third time I got arrested, they said, we're going to give the decision to you if you want to do 6 months secure custody, or you can do 3 months rehab. And I was like, I'm taking the rehab. And when I went to the rehab, though, it was way out in the country. There was some nurses there, some doctors. There was some really good structured people and educated people. I was only allowed to have 5 cigarettes a day, whereas if I went to young offenders custody, they were allowing me to have, as many cigarettes as I wanted, kind of thing. So I think this was, the first time where it was like, we're going to stand in front of you, and you need to be honest with yourself. So there was a lot of emotional demons that had come out throughout this rehabilitation piece, because I had to go into groups and talk and really share. Whereas young offenders custody, I never really had to share my feelings. You could do your time and get out. So rehabilitation and giving me that choice to be 6 months, they kind of manipulated me, because I was like, 6 months, I'm going to go do this 3 months. But because I did that 3 months, there was more of a therapy to it. So, and what I was eating, my physical movement, there was a spiritual side to it too. So
I had a question about kind of going back to childhood a little bit. And, you said when you were young, they were trying to figure out your behavioral issues. And you said you had a therapist. Were you open with, did everyone know kind of the history of the abuse, the sexual abuse? Did you open up about that kind of right away? Or, because it seems like that'd be kind of an obvious thing to see why you were, the behavioral issues were there.
Yeah, and I think there was also this, even with the bullying, I would see like, a kid get dropped off and mom and dad hugging the child, and I'd be like, that's my target kind of thing. Like, why does he get a mom and dad, or like the norm, or why does he get a really good lunch? Like, it's almost like I was jealous of other people's lives. I mean, I was only in grade 2, grade 3, and because I was always getting traumatized by something, I didn't really have like an outlet. And because it was continuous, it's like I didn't even really get a chance to heal from the last piece of trauma. So, and with ADHD and the medication, my dad didn't want me on medication. But I was in like art therapy. I was in like I seen some doctors, psychiatrists, and there was, PTSD. There was, I don't even just with the bullying. Now that I'm older, I'm like, I literally took my shit out on other people, and that's not okay. Like spitting on other kids, and I'd see a kid with a new outfit on. I'm like, why don't I get a new outfit? And I would like run in a puddle and try to get them all dirty, or I was setting kids' lockers on fire. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I look back and I'm like, I was just wild. So yeah, I think that those demons in me from the trauma, like I didn't know how to release it. And I think because there was a moment too where they didn't put me in a regular foster home anymore. They put me into a treatment center where I was with foster parents that were fully trained in I guess on a deeper level. So I kept also running away. So they put me like 45 minutes into the country. I was like, it's going to take me a long time to run away. So, and the problem with running away is you got to take all your shit with you. So, it's interesting to be 45 though, and look back and go, oh my gosh, like, how did I even get out of those dark tunnels?
Jessica, when you look at, say, like how the prison system is set up, and you look at how you had the choice between, the 6 months or the 3 months of rehabilitation, do you think that there could be a better way to set up, say, for people with like drug-related offenses, say like non-violent drug-related crimes? Do you think a more rehab approach is appropriate?
Absolutely. I think, with just going to do any kind of time, you're not really forced to do any kind of activity. Like it's like, here's your time and just do it. Whereas if you're in rehabilitation, there's kind of like this reinforcement of we're going to get down to the pit of this onion and figure out what's going on. Because as many of us know, I don't think, I don't know if there's a lot of people like, I mean, my reason for drugs and drug of choice, just to numb anything that was going on. I didn't want to feel, because anything that I was feeling wasn't on the happy side of the rainbow. It was like, it's all dark stuff. Why do I want to feel alone and lonely and just, why did these people do these things to me? So I didn't want to feel anything. So I think with the rehabilitation and just getting people to realize that I guess that choice of like, do you really want to go dig deep inside, or do you want to just go to your time and then go reoffend and go back in?
Yeah, that is incredible. So you went back to school. Can you kind of continue on from there?
Yeah, so I went to finished high school with honors. I was pretty proud of myself because I was living on my own. I didn't have parents to kind of say, hey, help me with my homework. But I pushed through high school, and then I went to Niagara College in Welland and graduated from the Correctional Worker program. Now, the thing is I had a criminal record from adult, and it was an indictable. So I had to wait 7 years until my probation was over, until I could apply for a Canadian pardon. And then it took a 3-year process. So I didn't actually get into my field until 11 years after. My criminal record was clear. And so I worked as a child and youth worker. It was my first job. And I was there for 15 years working with teenage boys that were highly aggressive. And then I also got transferred over working with 6 teenage girls. Did that for about 15 years. And then I yielded into the school board working as an educational assistant. Now I work with, any types of, children that are in crisis, and many different identities, special needs, behavioral. So it's not my lovely karma, but I feel like I'm a like a walking gift, because I can literally walk into a classroom and just try and build that rapport quickly as possible, get to the problem, listen to the individual, and make a plan together, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I was watching one of your videos earlier, and you were talking about kind of teaching kids life skills, and basically like what you were like kind of saying is you were like teaching them how to develop their emotional intelligence. So could you kind of like explain how you go about doing that, and like say if we had like a parent listening, how can we get kids to be more connected with their emotions?
You know what? I will just randomly pick something like, so with ADHD, I can't write a test in a classroom with a bunch of kids making noises, but I can go into a quiet room and ace a test because I have no distractions. So really trying to understand why a child doesn't want to sit all day, and finding remedies to help that individual. But before we even try to help that individual, it really is listening to that child and maybe asking them, three different ways on what's going on. Because if you've got someone who's 4 years old, or they're always going to want to move around. If you got somebody who's in grade 3 and he's still not wanting to sit after 3 or 4 years, and the teacher's still saying, sit down, sit down. Well, so these kids are moving around, and say if somebody's, not hungry in the morning, and all of a sudden in the middle of the day, lunch is over and now they're hungry. I mean, if you've got a diagnosis of, maybe somebody's on medication and they don't want to eat in the morning, or so I really think that we need to know every individual on a personal level, and a professional level, to help them. Um, it's like if I asked you guys, how are you doing today between 1 and 10? If you say that you're doing great as a 10, but the guy beside you, he's sitting at a 2, and I could say, well, why are you sitting at a 2? I don't want to talk about it. But what if he's sitting at a 2 and he does want to talk about it? I need to give him that opportunity. I need to listen. And let me say this 3 times: listen, 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 because that's where the core is, right? So my advice is to parents, teachers, principals: get to the core piece and listen to the individual. And even when we're 85 years old, our grandma could say, my back's sore. Or we're not going to like go and ask her if she wants to go to a Justin Bieber concert where everybody's mingling around. Right?
Yeah, that was perfect.
With your experience and, having, dealt with different issues as a, when you were young, and now getting into that field of work, you're obviously a huge advocate for those kids, because you can understand, as opposed to, some people that might be in that field that don't have that same life experience. Have you done any like mentoring for not for the kids even, but for teachers and principals and stuff like that, to really understand kids on that level?
Yeah. So I was in a CBC article, and I had, one of the opportunities was to for me to reach out to a couple people that I've worked with, teachers, principals, and get them to do kind of like a little chat with the reporter on the things that I've done. And again, I feel like my lived experience is a gift for children to become in my presence, because whatever that person's going through, or that child, mostly a child because that's where I work in the school, but anybody that I come in contact with, if I can help them in any way and give them a shortcut or give them a resource or anything, I'm not perfect in any means, but if I can quickly have that conversation with somebody and I can help them in any way, and just to kind of like help out my privacy in a little way with, younger children, I could say like, well, there's somebody I used to know, and then I would share, and then and to kind of give them that advice. But at the end of the day, people are going to go through what they go through. But I do, support a lot of parents, and especially when I was in the group homes for 15 years working with the boys, trying to get them prepared. You're 18, you're about to move on your own. You need to save money before you move out. This is how you cook affordable meals, And even if I was driving, I'd be like, yeah, when you go to do your test, you should do this or this, or just any little skill set that I can share with, I was a walking parent for them. So these are boys that, were in the same situation I was in without a parent skill set, right?
I think it's super important to get those skill sets too, because like when I went to school when I was younger, you didn't learn about finances really, or what to like, cook affordably or do any of that like normal stuff, right? Some kids are just thrown out there and don't even know what they're doing. So I think like that's a great idea to even have in schools.
Yeah, and I think that, even just explaining to a student now who's like, I work in a grade 6 class, explaining to them that, for a 1 bedroom, it's $1,500 to buy new socks and, a new hoodie and a pair of shoes, and then to meal count and say, this is what I can afford for food. So I have to buy this and this to count out your meals. Like if you're only making, say, $2,000 a month, and like, and to find a job that's going to pay that much. So just letting these students know that, I collect items for the homelessness. I go to tent cities, and this is what I do. Why are they in tent cities, Miss Compton? Well, because, some of them are situations where maybe they've, dabbled with some drugs, or maybe they lost their job. Like, so just being real and raw with these students and youth and parents, and sharing those resources, right? Just being real.
Jessica, so can you kind of tell us about Tree of Stars on tour?
Yeah, so everything on social media is Tree of Stars. On Instagram, it's Tree of Stars on tour. So I have been involved in many different projects in many different ways, and I've created a link tree for that. Thank God for that, because I feel like it so things aren't all over the place. But and there's a link in my bio on Tree of Stars. So when it birthed, at the birth of it was, I went for a hernia surgery on my stomach, and the doctor said, no worries, you'll be off for 3 weeks. Well, during this surgery, I had woken up on the surgery table. They're drilling away, and I was like, oh my gosh, worst experience ever. Don't ever wake up on the surgery table. But yeah, so I was off for 5 months. I ended up running into pneumonia, running into like infections. It opened up again. So I was off for 5 months. In that 5 months, I thought I was, self-caring. I thought I was healed. I thought I went through all the therapies. I thought I was good. But I think and I never ever in my life had this much time to myself. But the doctor said, literally, you can't move. You have to sit there. So this was the first time in my life where I was sitting with myself. I wasn't working. I wasn't doing therapy. Like, I just sat with myself. And I started journaling again. And I think with the surgery, it kind of pulled up some old stuff, and I wanted to share my story with other people. So I created a cafe tour, went around to different cafes, started doing workshops, created and developed workshops where it was free, still is free to this day. Even with the pandemic, every Wednesday we've got self-care groups. And then when the pandemic happened, I was like, you know what? I still want to support other people, especially musicians. My dad was a DJ. I was surrounded by music all the time. I self-taught myself how to play guitar. I've always been around music. So I created a mission statement. I went with it. And it's kind of just grown in different ways organically. So I feel like it's almost like, maybe Google started out in a garage and now they're just like, they've taken over. So I feel like Tree of Stars is its own thing, and it just organically happens. Again, I'm involved in many different things, collecting items for the homeless, and then interviewing almost 500 people around the world, especially wellness advocates, and just and paying musicians gigs to come into Zooms and having them perform their music. And yeah, interviewing artists, just kind of just being myself. Really, it's this one place where I can go and support people in an accessible way as well. So yeah, I mean, to kind of condense everything, it's all in the link tree to make it a little bit easier.
In the same video I was watching, you said something super cool that I love. You said self-care and self-love is a continuous process, and that is awesome. What do you do personally for self-care?
So I wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do is I use my it's a gratitude journal, and then I do probably a good 10 minutes of reading. And when I read, it's different books of all sorts. I've got a list. If anybody's interested in messaging me on good books, Jay Shetty's one of them, Louise Hay's. One that I'm reading right now, the guy's a surgeon, and he said, I actually don't think I have empathy. And his whole book is about him developing empathy, which is super cool. Anyway, I don't want to get off track. I really try to be mindful on sleep, intake of water. I think water is super important. The kid that I work with, we have this thing where we like cheers every 15 minutes to cheers our water. And I think it's super awesome. I light sage candles. So even though I was, living on the reserve, I still practice many different religions. And I embrace that. If it's essential oils, I try to move. I'm not going to lie, I've been emotionally eating a little bit more than I should in the last 2 years. So that's that continuous self-care and self-love, is reflecting and going, okay, you know what, I need to work on this because I'm not perfect. But yeah, I think all the little things, right? Staying connected with people, making sure that that I've got. So one thing I want to share, even with you guys, is, have you ever looked at your phone and there's like a list of phone numbers, like just people, and it just seems like, I don't know, it's kind of like, so what I've done in my life is, with my cell phone, is I have an A list, a B list, and a C list. A list, I'm like, you guys are the top notch people in my life. Like, you guys are always there for me. B list, I'm like, meh, you're in my life, but you're not in my A list for whatever reason. And then my C list, not really sure why they're there. People from, some people from my family are on my C list. So I think, setting my own limits and boundaries with who I allow into my life and my energies. Yeah, there's probably more in my daily, but especially with I do take medication as an adult for ADHD, trying to get off my electronics and just only spending a certain amount of time. It's kind of like back in the day with video games. I feel like that's like with social media, right?
It's funny you say that about the A, B, and C list. I mean, I really like that idea. And I was just thinking the other day, and I don't know if it has anything to do with now in recovery, not drinking, but I did notice myself anyway, not really caring so much about contacting certain people that maybe previously I would have, and maybe that was for whatever reason, seeking approval or just to hang out with. And now I'm pretty content, and if I don't talk to them, I don't talk to them. It's not really a big deal. So I kind of like that, though, prioritizing that list there. That's kind of cool. Would we be in your list? Would you put us in your list, please?
For sure. Well, I'll put you in my B list, and we'll see if you can move to the A list. And you know what? Sometimes we move those people. Like, I've had friends in my A list for 20 years, and throughout the pandemic, I'm like, you know what? I know people disconnect, but I really feel like this pandemic has allowed us to really, really see who gives us purpose, who checks in with us. And we're allowed to be selfish. Don't get me wrong here. I've kind of taken the pandemic as, I did way more art than I thought of, and, even just with anything. But I think also, when we're looking at social media, I have my TikTok, that's for all my adventures and, anything fun that I'm doing. And then I also have like an Instagram for my photography. I have my other Instagram for my art, and I do art only to give it away to somebody for free. So I have these different social media platforms for different types of hobbies. And it is true. Be careful who you follow, because that news feed, if you keep clicking on that negativity stuff, and then it pulls you over there, it's that algorithm, right? So it's kind of like doing a purge through all of your social media platforms, doing a purge through your phone, and kind of doing a spring cleaning on who serves you purpose.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Jessica, you also mentioned your Zoom meetings on Wednesday nights. There's self-care groups, correct?
Yeah.
If someone like our listeners were interested in joining the group, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so if you go to Tria Stars on Facebook or on Instagram, Tria Stars on Tour, there is a link. So when you click on that link, you can scroll down to the Zoom every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So when they come in, we talk about self-care. We have a couple journal prompts. We do some sharing. It is optional to be on camera or even to share. And then we have a musician that comes in every Wednesday, a different musician from around the world comes in at 8 o'clock. They perform a couple songs, and then we allow them to stay if they want. We've had some musicians stay, but we do some yoga and meditation. We have 4 different meditation and yoga instructors. Their links are also in the link tree. And we like to have different instructors because maybe somebody that, you do meditation with, maybe doesn't fit you. So they're all different. And then, yeah, we close it up sometimes with a door prize. With the pandemic, we've been able to do a draw every month. And if somebody's we have people from, Germany and Australia and all over the place. So it's nice with a door prize if even if we mail them out, a gift card or e-transfer or anything like that. So, and I just have to thank all the restaurants, because if you go to our website, all the sponsorships are there. They've donated anywhere from cash to help us pay the musicians or for any kind of gift certificates. And during the pandemic, restaurants were not doing so good. So those were our main sponsors and still are our main sponsors that help out with the free group. So again, we've been doing it for 5 years, used to do it out in cafes, but I feel like the Zoom, again, this is an opportunity for people to have this global support for free.
Absolutely.
I had a quick question on, I think it was one of your last interviews you did, and I listened to it, and I may consider going raw vegan. How close were you to wanting to transition to that when he was talking? And I'm like, man, I'm just thinking I might do this.
Right? So he's the first, everything he spoke about, he really knew his stuff. And he's got videos on there how to kind of like transition yourself from, and he's right. Like when we eat a great big steak, how does our stomach feel? Or if we're eating, I don't know, too many eggs or, just too many products that's not organic or fresh. So I definitely agree with him on, the mental health and what we're eating. I feel like, it's almost the Jillian Michaels when she used to say, what you eat is what you are. And I'm living it with the pandemic. I've been, probably eating too much. So definitely, yeah, that guy is super inspirational though, like with the purpose, talking about the purpose. And I'm actually reading a book right now, and I interviewed this guy too. The book's called Awake, and if you ever get a chance, it's an easy read, super cheap, $20 on Amazon. And the guy's name is Evan Sutter. It's a mindful book, but it's all about like the walking, the eating, and the purpose. Like we're talking about the ABC list, like all of the stuff. It's like literally all of the stuff in one little book. And I feel like the kids, nowadays should have a little book like that. And yeah. So yeah, the vegan, are you doing it?
No, but I do, like, I'm actually not a huge, and well, right now I'm living back home with my parents too. So my mommy cooks me meals. So whatever she cooks, I kind of eat, but I'm not a big like red meat eater and stuff anyway. So for me, I feel like I could probably like give up some of that pretty easily anyway. But yeah, I definitely just maybe want to, at the very least, like make sure I'm more cautious of what I'm eating. Cause I have noticed that, like, I never noticed it when I was drinking a lot, my nutrition, obviously. But now that I haven't been, I notice when like I have a bag of chips, how I feel the next day. I really, dragging and almost feel hungover, which I never noticed that before, right? Like, because it was just the booze, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think even with water intake, right? Like I feel so much better when I have all that water in me. And, I don't know about you guys too, like even just I think my number one thing is getting a good night's sleep. I think that's like my number one thing. If I do not sleep, I'm like a bear coming out of a cave that's just not good. What would you say? Can I kind of turn the tables on you guys? Is what would be your number one self-care where like I need to do this?
Mine is also sleep. I was journaling about this the other day, actually. And if my sleep is off, I'm off. Absolutely.
Yeah, mine is sleep for sure. And I haven't been sleeping the greatest for the past like month and a half, and I've been pretty sluggish. So I think overworking myself sometimes gets me like, just like my mind's just always racing, and I have trouble going to bed. But yeah, I think I just got to relax a little bit and get some sleep.
Yeah, I think, I always ask the kids is like how to get there. So if your number one thing is sleep, it's like, okay, now how am I gonna make that plan to get there? And I feel like the first thing I have to do is I gotta turn my phone and all my electronics off by 9 o'clock. And then by 9:30, I need to be in bed ready so that I can fall asleep by 10 and get my 8 hours of sleep. So I guess it's that how to, and when do we want to start that goal, right? It's kind of like the eating raw. I don't know when that's going to happen.
All right. So if you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please reach out and get help. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
And thank you for all you do for our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a great pleasure. And if I'm out anybody's way, I will be sure to hit you up for a coffee if you make it to my A-list. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.